Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video, massive, unexpected news about the next Battlefield game, and I'm just gonna say this up front, it's a lot of good news. So let's jump right in. If you plan on following Battlefield or Delta Force, definitely subscribe to the channel. I have been streaming Battlefield every single day for 6 years, and I've covered all the Battlefield games for those 6 years. So this channel is the place for you for all Battlefield news, gameplay, and informational videos. Be sure to like the video as well. Thank you for watching. I was minding my own business, scrolling Twitter, and all of a sudden I saw an article from IGN stating that we get to see the very first piece of concept art from the new Battlefield game, which remains untitled, and that they interviewed Vince Zampella. This came out of nowhere. I was not expecting to see anything about the next Battlefield, let alone concept art, until well into 2025. Probably about April or May 2025. So the fact that they're showing this to us now is actually pretty interesting. Taking a look at this concept art, we can divulge quite a lot. First of all, this confirms that the next Battlefield game is modern. If you take a look at the left side of the image, there is a ship, perhaps a destroyer, in the bay or the harbor of this city. If you look above the ships, there are attack helicopters. And if you take a look at the city, first of all, you'll notice that this is definitely some sort of an AI-generated image because it just sort of looks really messy and sloppy in the direct center of the image. But this appears to be somewhere in Europe, perhaps along the Mediterranean Sea, maybe south of France, Italy, Greece, somewhere along those lines. Inside of this article, they actually refused to confirm the exact location of this city, which is pretty interesting. A couple things we can learn from this is Battlefield appears to be returning to this all-out warfare style. Land, sea, and air combat will most likely be making a return in the next Battlefield game. Diving a bit into the article now, Vince Zampella really focuses on returning to Battlefield's basics, and he acknowledges some extremely important things. First of all, he acknowledges that Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 was the best era for Battlefield. That is very important because he understands why those games should be considered to be the greatest Battlefield has ever been. That is more important than I think more people are realizing at this point. And another very important thing that Vince mentions in this article is the fact that he is aware that EA and DICE have to win their community back. He is not delusional in that regard. He is aware of the position of the Battlefield franchise. That is, again, extremely important. Vince goes on to say that, quote, "If you look at the pinnacle of Battlefield, it's Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 era where everything was modern. And I think we have to get back to the core of what Battlefield is and do that amazingly well, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But I think for me, it's that peak of Battlefieldness that's in Battlefield 3 and 4 days. So I think it's nostalgic for players, for me, for even the teams. Those are kind of the heyday, although I would also say 1942. End quote. So even at the end there, Vince also mentions Battlefield 1942 on top of Battlefield 3 and 4. Obviously, because there is such little information out about the next Battlefield game, people are speculating all over the place about what it has feature-wise. But one of the features that is confirmed to not be returning in the next Battlefield game is 128 players. Vince has this to say about that. Quote, "The 128 players, did it make it more fun? Like, doing the number for the sake of the number doesn't make any sense. We're testing everything around what's the most fun. So like you said, the maps, once they get to a certain scale, become different. It's a different play space. And I think you have to design around that. So we're designing something that is more akin to previous Battlefields. I'd rather have nice, dense, well-designed play spaces. Some of them are really good, and I can't wait for you to see some of them." End quote. One thing I want to point out is Vince understands the impact 128 players had on Battlefield 2042's maps. He said, once they reach a certain scale, they become different. He couldn't be any more correct. And once again, this is really great to hear because he understands the actual problems. And it is very rare to hear that directly from the mouth of someone that has direct control of the next Battlefield game. Moving along on this article, the next statement is being so well received, and it's such a breath of fresh air to even hear this be confirmed this early on. Specialists will not be making a return in the next Battlefield. Now, me personally, I thought that was a given. If they made the mistake of putting specialists in the next Battlefield game, you could have pretty much just chalked up the game as a failure to begin with, but it is so nice to hear that confirmed right now. Vince had this to say on the subject, quote, "So I wasn't there for 2042. I don't know what the rationale was, but for me, it's like the team tried something new. You have to applaud them for that. Not everyone liked it, but you gotta try new things. It didn't work. It didn't fit. Specialists will not be coming back. So classes are kind of at the core of Battlefield, and we're going back to that." End quote. Now, the next statement he makes is kind of perplexing. He states that Battlefield 2042 wasn't a, quote, failure of a game, which is just a very strange statement because it clearly was in pretty much every way. In fact, Battlefield 2042 is famous for being a failure. So I'm not really sure in his perspective on that, and that's kind of unsettling. But then he also says simultaneously something very good. He says he wants the next Battlefield game to be good out of the gate, which is something I've been emphasizing for years. They need to focus on their quality and their execution. You cannot have a bad first impression. This is quite possibly Battlefield's last stand, okay? If the game has a bad first impression, that will linger with the game for eternity. So it is more important than ever to have the next Battlefield game be good out of the gate. And once again, it's good to hear that from the mouth of someone that is actively working on the game. Whether or not it actually happens is another thing, and I'll touch on that later in the video. The next few comments from Vince are regarding the scope and just the undertaking of making this Battlefield game, and if you will remember, EA CEO Andrew Wilson claimed that this next Battlefield project is the, quote, most ambitious project in EA's history, end quote. So it's already had some pretty ridiculous statements being made about it, but this is what Vince had to say. Quote, "Yeah, it's definitely betting bigger on Battlefield. It's going in and expanding what Battlefield is. We have to have the core. The core Battlefield players know what they want. They've been with us forever. They've been amazing supporters. We need to earn their trust back and get them back on our side. And then it's expanding out and getting more players into the universe and seeing what we can do. So when you want a different experience, you don't have to leave Battlefield. You can experience more things within the Battlefield universe, so we're expanding the offerings that we're giving." End quote. A couple things I want to touch on here. Number one, it's very good that he acknowledges that they need the core Battlefield players. It's good that they acknowledge that they need to earn the core Battlefield player base's trust back and get them back on their side. Now, if you caught the end of that paragraph, you would notice that he mentioned that he wanted to get new players into Battlefield eventually, so then when you want a different experience, you don't necessarily have to leave Battlefield, and they're planning to expand the offerings. That is directly referencing some sort of different gameplay offering, like a Battle Royale, or an extraction shooter, or something new that they might be cooking up for Battlefield. That is what he's referencing. If I had to speculate, Delta Force is probably putting a lot of pressure on them internally because Delta Force is not only free-to-play, it's a free-to-play Battlefield and extraction shooter combo that is actually decent. So I think they probably feel internal pressure to offer the exact same things. Moving on in the article, it becomes a little strange. Again, this is an IGN article that I will link in the description. Then Zempella comments on whether or not they're trying to go directly at Call of Duty and whether or not Battlefield wants some sort of quote-unquote transmedia series like a Battlefield-style show. And his comments on this, I kind of agree. First of all, he pretty much shut down the entire possibility of there being a Battlefield-themed show, stating that right now, we're not looking at anything like that for Battlefield. Then, in terms of Call of Duty, he was asked about the sales and if it can outsell COD, and he said, well, we're making something for us. We're not looking to take down Call of Duty. We're making something that's different, and we're making something that's us. It's definitely a possibility, though. So a bit of a strange turn there, but then at the very end of the article, we have yet another pretty big piece of information dropped. Vince drops on us that, quote, "We have a program that we're going to announce next year around getting more community in, because that's the kind of core of what we have to do. Get the community back on our side, get that trust back." So I think we're in a really good place. Is it challenging? Of course, but it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't. Unfortunately, he didn't give us much detail, but a lot of people are speculating that what he's referring to is he might be bringing back the community test environment from Battlefield 4 and from Battlefield 1. I think that would be a phenomenal idea, and it is exactly the time to bring something like that back into Battlefield. So, what do I think about all of this news? Well, I streamed this news, going over this article and everything, to an audience of over 1,500 Battlefield viewers today. And I asked those people what they thought, and the consensus was extremely positive, but people were very tentative to put their hopes into this because of exactly what Vince mentions in this article. They have to win people's trust back. People don't really care about words. These are all great things, and if they truly do happen, then I think the next Battlefield has a great chance of being successful. But we won't know until we actually get our hands on it. Words only go so far, and they need to prove to us via a great game that this isn't just a bunch of fancy words on a piece of paper. So, while I personally think pretty much everything in this article is great news, we have to wait and see what actually happens. We've heard a lot of great news, even about Battlefield 2042, and look how that game turned out. So, we're kind of in I'll believe it when I see it era. We really are. I will believe the next Battlefield game is good and real once I have my two hands on it and I'm playing it and I'm not delusional and I actually look at it and I go, wow, this is pretty good, guys. I can't believe you've done it. So definitely let me know what you think in the comments section down below, particularly on this video. Maybe even if you don't comment a lot, let me know what you think, because this is certainly very unexpected news. It's very positive news, and quite frankly, it's abnormal for this to be out this early about a Battlefield game that is supposed to be releasing at the end of 2025. If you found this video informative or you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on. I will be streaming Battlefield and Delta Force regularly in the future, and of course covering everything to do with those games. So if you plan on following those, definitely subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the like button, join the Discord, follow me on Twitter. All links are in the description. Love to see some of you guys there. And of course, come by the streams. I stream every single day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.